what I think are the skills that are going to be irreplaceable even in the future with AGI. So the first one is the domain-specific knowledge. So when it comes about like very risky or complex fields like healthcare or government decisions or software engineering, these skills are still not going to be fully automated, and AI is going to be like a second opinion. And the second thing, I think, of course, it's curiosity, because again, AI is trained on the data that we have in the internet, so it's like a past. So the real breakthroughs needs abstract thinking, originality, and the ability to challenge foundations. So this is still going to be a human skill.
Well said, and I love the word curiosity, right? Our PAD, from a literacy perspective, my 3 C's are curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. And as AI advances and takes over some tasks, we want to look at it augmenting the human, not superseding the human. And what I find really interesting is the World Economic Forum created a list of the top 10 fastest growing skills by 2030. And that came out this year. And top 1, AI and big data, no shock. Number 2 was networks and cybersecurity, also probably not a shock. 6 out of the next 8 are all human. Curiosity, creative thinking, analytical thinking, lifelong learning. I think, for me, one of the things that excites me the most about AI is it allows us to be more human again. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. When it can take over tasks that are boring and we don't want, freeing up our time to critically think and create new ideas and generate ideas, that's where I want to operate. And so I think the future of AI allows us to be more human, to be more creative, and develop those skills that we just don't necessarily have time to do right now.
And Jordan, isn't that what we've actually been doing for years? I mean, I've been in this business more than 40 years. We've been building computer systems that allow us to do more things, and hopefully the things we want to do, not the things we don't want to do.
Yeah, and I think
so. Is that just the same trend, just accelerating a little bit now?
I would say that is what we've been trying to do, but for a lot of people, the familiarity of the tools, they took on more work versus taking on more effective work. Those are 2 distinct things. And so I do think what AI now does is it democratizes intelligence. Democratizing intelligence allows us to have a partner that augments us and allows curiosity to thrive. So yes, in a way, that's where we should have been going. But I would argue a lot of businesses take on a lot of work that isn't necessarily effective because they can't.
When I first, saw the question, right, what skills remain irreplaceable, when AI, as you say, might master cognition, right? And my first thing I thought of was like, well, cognition. Will AI master cognition for sure? Like, we don't know, right? But even if it does, and, it could exceed human cognition in every way, even, if we have to move beyond, different models and develop world models and those types of things, regardless, we still want to have our own cognition, right? And we're always going to have some, but we want to develop that, right? We want to develop our learning, our thinking, everything that all of you have been talking about. And I think, regardless of kind of where, the computers land in terms of the cognition, so to speak, we're all humans, right? And there's this messiness of we're kind of being humans, right? And we're going to have to kind of negotiate that and talk through that. And, a lot of people, even some people who are dating the AIs or whatever, most people still want to interact with humans, right? And we're going to have to learn how to kind of navigate and get better at navigating our relationships with each other. And of course, with, digital and physical intelligence. And I think a lot of that, I could talk about it more later. I think a lot of that can be accomplished, through debating, or that can be like one of the tools that we use to kind of help communicate, critically think, everything everyone's been discussing. But I think we want to, what's important to me is that we keep developing that cognition and not think like, well, just because the computers are developing some cognitive capacities, we don't need those anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, I did sneak in the word potentially masters cognition, right? Because who knows, right? We really don't know where we're.
There's a good chance. I think there's a good shot.
Sandra, how about you?
Well, I kind of step back and look at this basically as the history of the humanities, because what we've been trying to answer for years through all sorts of formats such as art, literature, music, etc. Basically every or most human endeavors is really what is the nature of being human. Now that's really big enough here, right? To bring it back down a little bit, when we think of cognition, is that our only way of knowing? How do we define cognition? And are we thinking of it in a very culturally limited framework of cognition is from here up and is impersonal, detached from the rest of the, and I'm sorry, I need to make a reference to the bodily scholar, the rest of the body as a metaphor for all the other nature, elements of human nature, everything from hearing a song that you heard when you were young and it bringing back emotion to just hitting it off with someone and you don't know why. It's that unique spark that can arise between a human and a work of art, a human and another human, the difference between being alone, being in a group interaction. We still don't know a lot about what it means to be human. And I think that AI gives us a chance to continually pursue that question. That's the part I find exciting.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I also, and this kind of, not just what you said and Stefan as well, bringing that together is one of the things sometimes we should consider is what we do today is not what we'll be doing tomorrow. And what will we be doing tomorrow, right? So if AI can do some of the things I do today, does that mean I do nothing, which is sometimes the default assumption, but that's the wrong answer. What will I be doing? And again, you can look back to where we were 40 years ago or 100 years ago and what we're doing today versus what we would have been doing then without these machines. So I think the fact that things are changing so much matters a lot. And I think that's one of the things you guys are saying too.
First, I liked how Anna kind of set the stage, because I think we do have to always remind ourselves about what this technology can do. And I suppose I guess I'd be also in the skeptical camp a little bit that we're already doing things with cognition. I also think that the humanities are going to make a comeback, so to speak. I was a philosophy minor as an undergrad, and I think that that's going to become an important area to investigate these things. But I don't think I'm going to remember all of Jordan's C's there, but I'm going to throw out another C. Context. I know when I sit down with a client and I'm trying to help them with a business problem, there's a substantial conversation that has to go on, trying to translate whatever they're dealing with in their business in some form that machine learning or AI can help with. And we have to have that same kind of conversation with these tools. And I think we sometimes underestimate how much of that work we have to do, because it's all about that context window and putting a lot of rich context with these tools. And when we put them in those modes where they spend those extra minutes, is that something like cognition? Again, I'm a little bit skeptical there, but it can be a remarkable tool for manipulating and searching text. But we have to constantly remind ourselves that fundamentally that's what it's doing.
And we hear a lot about. I think context is one of the most important concepts in this conversation. We also hear a lot about hallucinations, right? And isn't a hallucination really that you are not in the same context as the LLM, or the LLM is not, it's just like you and I are having a conversation and I say, who won the game last night? And I'm talking about football. You're talking about baseball, right? And you say the Yankees and I go, what is he talking about? Isn't that generally what context means, is that we're not talking about the same thing, so we get weird answers.
I think you're right. I think if you have a really rich context, it's less likely to hallucinate. But the other thing that I mention with clients sometimes is that they think, or they are certain they want to do a Gen AI project, but sometimes they don't want the Gen AI part of that. What they really want is they want to get an exact answer, the same answer every single time, with natural language, right? Mm-hmm. So often there's a lot of, I think, kind of client education involved, and are they really ready for that generative aspect?
Yeah, we see that a lot in our business. Traditional business intelligence layered with a much easier conversational user interface. Again, though, that sometimes, and I'll let you go in a second here, Jordan. Sometimes the problem we see is, show me the financials. Well, that's the same problem I have with the CFO. I give him the financials, and he goes, "No, I really meant the financials in California," right? It's like, okay, we have to certainly set that context before, just like in any conversation, before we get the right answer. So, Jordan,
yeah, all I was going to say is when I travel and I speak, I ask audiences, how many of you are actually worried about hallucination? And personally, I don't worry about it a whole lot but I'm an AI guy and I'm willing to evaluate and critically think on it and push back. And what I tell them, though, and I think we need to remember this, is what hallucinates with data more than AI does? Humans do. And not unbeknownst to them, a lot of times they misuse data. They use it for biased solutions, everything like that. So this goes right back to what Keith and all of us are saying, is that education piece of literacy, of how do you prompt it? How do you bring context? How do you evaluate it? That is a human skill. That don't fear hallucinations. Bring those things to the hallucinations so you understand the model better. Bring those things to humans using data, because everywhere we go, look at politics, and I'm not going to go into which side this or that, they all do it, but they misuse data to get their audience to think a certain way. AI misuses data because that's the statistical probability that is coming out of it. We as the humans have that ability to critically think on it, bring context and evaluate it, to rid that negative light from it.